Had several teams, and I was fortunate to lead leaders and help develop leaders that ran that division for Stericycle. So that was my, I guess, long-winded introduction into not only waste, but recurring, business to business, recurring revenue, recurring services, contracted services. Over the next handful of years, the company that stepped up and the company that was built based on to fill that demand was Stericycle. And and that group, the group that kind of came with that in the mid 1990s. And they stepped up and they did it with trucks, and they take waste from where it's generated to where it can be treated, and then they bury it. And that was the form of service that they started, and it built and it built and it built, and it built that same way. And everyone's attention to, amongst other things that were extremely serious, that it was a very difficult time to have a startup, as in any industry. It was a difficult time to do business in any industry. Now you take a company in the healthcare space dealing with medical waste that is now, incredibly critical or important to do the right way. And you're coming with a new venture at that same time, trying to get this industry that is burdened with a pandemic to change their ways and explore something new. Difficult mix, difficult timing, to say the least. And we learned a lot.
Hello, welcome to the Sayva Spotlight, a client-focused podcast where we interview founders and CEOs of some of our most exciting businesses to learn about their industries, value props, and what differentiates them from the competition. My name is Johnny Kasayan, and I'm the host of the Sayva Spotlight. I'm a certified public accountant and the vice president of strategic operations for Sayva Solutions. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Chris Ramirez. Chris is the CEO of OnSite Waste Technologies, a California company dedicated to improving the lives and practices of healthcare providers with better medical waste solutions. From their proprietary TE5000, a smart desktop device that sterilizes medical waste and turns it into regular trash, to their analytics platform, WasteTech IQ, that finds data-driven solutions for reducing waste, OnSite designs everything with healthcare providers in mind. Visit onsitewaste.com for more information. Chris, thanks for joining us today on the Sayva Spotlight.
Thank you for having me, Johnny. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, let's hop into it. So, Chris, prior to joining OnSite as Chief Revenue Officer and then CEO, you had several experiences in the waste removal space. Can you tell us a bit about those experiences and how it led you to OnSite?
Yeah, sure. So earlier in my career, I joined a company called Cintas, where I was a sales rep selling paper shredding services, a route-based service. Document management. Cintas at the time had a division, Cintas Document Management, and so I started there in Kansas City and learned all about not only reoccurring revenue, but the importance in protecting contents and what waste really meant. And shredding is really important because that's information that obviously could get in the hands of the wrong person, could do some damage to a business. So I started there. Cintas merged with a company called Shred-it at the time. They did a joint venture. Eventually, Shred-it took over that venture and packaged everything up. At that time, I left Kansas City, took a management role in California, which brought me out here to the beautiful Golden Coast. And this is about 2015 when I came out here to the West Coast. Shred-it, then integrated, and eventually in 2016 sold to a company called Stericycle. And Stericycle is the largest medical waste company. Didn't have a presence really in document management or document shredding. Shred-it only had document management and document shredding, and so they found the adjacencies and synergies there. Stericycle bought Shred-it. That's really where I became introduced to medical waste at that point. Spent some time there in California, kind of integrating that, packaging that up, running a sales team out in the Western region, and eventually landed myself in a role out of Stericycle's corporate headquarters, which is in Northbrook, Illinois, in the Chicago area. And really dove into the medical waste side of the business, specifically what's known as small quantity generators. So in my world of waste, specifically regulated medical waste, you have large quantity generators and small quantity generators. Pretty simple there. The line depends on the state, but basically, if you're a hospital or if you generate more than 200 pounds of medical waste a month, you're considered a large quantity. So they set those over here. Everyone else, whether you're a long-term care facility, a veterinary clinic, primary care, pediatrics, surgery, most surgery centers, those are all considered small quantity generators. When I was moved from Shred-it into Chicagoland with Stericycle, that was the realm that I lived in, was the small quantity generators. At the time, I was the director of healthcare solutions. This goes back 2017, 18, 19, around that time. Had several teams, and I was fortunate to lead leaders and help develop leaders that ran that division for Stericycle. So that was my, I guess, long-winded introduction into not only waste, but reoccurring, business to business, reoccurring revenue, reoccurring services, contracted services, but then waste as well, document management, as well as regulated medical waste. So it was a fun period of time of learning there. In 2019, I had the unexpected opportunity at the time with my family. We were relocating. Well, I should say, during my time in Chicago, I actually commuted every week. So I hopped on the same flight every Monday from Orange County and got off the plane at ORD, Chicago O'Hare, on Monday evening, spent the week in the office in Northbrook, and then got on a plane, same plane every week, same plane, same flight every Thursday, and came back. So did that during most of my time there at Stericycle every week.
Wow.
Which was quite the experience. But the idea and the goal was to relocate the family. We had a house in escrow in Arlington Heights, California, and it's kind of a wild story. I don't think I've ever made it public, on a platform like this, but we were in escrow, loved a house. We were purchasing the house on March 5th, 2019. And on February 22nd, I was reached out to on LinkedIn regarding an opportunity here in Orange County for a startup, a group of investors that had invested in this piece of technology that was going to change how small quantity generators managed and disposed of their medical waste. Asked me if I'd be interested in learning more about it. At the time, I had no intention of leaving. We had a house. Our belongings were in a pod. My wife is very committed to the move, moving us closer to our family. At the time, we had a 2-year-old son. So everything was all in on this move. I only responded to the cold email on LinkedIn because I knew that if this was real, that if a piece of technology could manage medical waste in a way that small quantity generators could turn the regulated medical waste into trash, throw it away without a truck, without storage, without all the costs and all the fees and everything associated with that, then that was going to disrupt my business. And at the time at Stericycle, that was it still is a very big business there. And so I took the call out of curiosity just to see what was going on. Met with them that week. So it's still in February, and they actually made me offer and said, we want you to bring this to market. And I had not expected that going into the meeting, but the more I learned about it and the more I learned about the team, it was something to strongly consider, despite how difficult of a sale I knew that would be with my wife. But I said, draw something up and let's look at it. Internally, I had always wanted, I love the show Shark Tank, who doesn't if you're in business. And I always admired those that stood on that stage and pitched to the sharks. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not going to invent anything. I'm not an engineer at all. I don't even know where to start with coding. I'm really not that smart, and I'm more of a generalist than anything. So I thought, if there's ever an opportunity, I went and got my MBA at University of Southern California for this moment, to be an entrepreneur, to bring a company to market. If there's ever an opportunity, it's now. And that was my sales pitch to my wife, and it was scary. And we pulled out of escrow on March 1st, which was, I think, the Monday, and we were closing on Friday. And that's the day that I gave notice and committed to moving over to this new venture that I really didn't know much about, OnSite Waste Technologies.
Wow.
So that was 2019. And I stepped over, and it's been a roller coaster ever since.
Wow. That's an incredible story. And I mean, just having seeing the product and being like, hey, this is a disruptor. I need to take it seriously and, make this consideration. That's just amazing. And I can only imagine that must have been a tough sell at home. But I'm sure now, everybody's happy that you guys were, on the same page and got on board.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even as much about the technology at the time. It was still really in its infancy stages. It hadn't been brought to market, obviously. It was still a prototype. And I didn't know enough at the time about that piece of technology. Everything happened so quickly. But what I did know is that the idea that technology can disrupt a non-technological space that deserves to be advanced, I did know that. And so whether it was this piece of technology or another piece of technology, I really liked the team and I loved the mission. And so, and the technology seemed to be good as well. So at least in its prototype form, we learned a lot once we brought it to market, and we've made a lot of iterations since. But that's really what it was. It was the mission, the idea that you can take technology and drive an industry towards sustainability and towards advancement. And I felt like the medical waste space deserved that, and healthcare deserved that. And this was the opportunity to take your chance on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to be in Newport Beach, can't beat that, right?
There's worse places to swim around to and see than the water. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I see. I did the opposite of you. I went from San Diego to Milwaukee. So I went, from from the West Coast to the Midwest.
Yeah. Well, I've spent some time in Milwaukee, and I can see the similarities, definitely. San Diego.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so you talked about the product, but let's dive into how the medical waste industry seemed kind of primitive. It seemed like they've been doing it a certain way for many years, and that method seemed antiquated. So let's talk about the TE 5000 and really what that's doing and how it's changing the game.
Sure. Well, if we can, I think it'd be helpful to just back up a little bit
Yeah.
and put in some context about the industry. It antiquated, traditional. It's kind of been doing the same thing for several decades, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Several decades ago, but you're looking in the 1980s, there was really not a lot of regulation, so there wasn't much formation of an industry at the time. There were needles, there were syringes at the time. That in that era of the 1980s, everyone became very primed to the negative impacts and the risks associated. And so Congress had to pull together a group to say, let's do something about this. Let's kind of formulate a plan to kind of regulate this. And over the next handful of years, the company that stepped up and the company that was built based on to fill that demand was Stericycle. And and that group, the group that kind of came with that in the mid 1990s. And they stepped up and they did it with trucks, and they take waste from where it's generated to where it can be treated, and then they bury it. And that was the form of service that they started, and it built and it built and it built, and it built that same way. And fast forward 30 years, it's quite the infrastructure that's been built on that model. And there's a lot of, it's not too difficult to get into the space of transporting medical waste. You can pick up medical waste easy enough to get your permit in certain states, get your permit, pick up waste, take it, pay to get it treated. It's a pretty simple model there too. And so you have Stericycle, which at one point had over 50% of the market share. I know that's since over the last decade come down quite a bit, but they still are 50 times bigger than their next closest competitor by revenue, maybe not quite 50, but 25. So they are the large whale in the space. And then there are 400 or so permitted transporters of medical waste. So there's a lot of regional, a lot of local players. So you have a big player, and then you have hundreds of small players. And in that construct, it's not suitable for innovation or for challenging really what the industry, how the industry does things, how that waste is transported, what happens when it's generated. Well, everyone knows what happens when it's generated. You put it in a closet and you keep it there for several weeks or sometimes several months. And that infectious waste sits there until a truck comes and picks it up and takes it to go get cleaned and then buried into the ground. It's just how it's always been. Healthcare has far more important things to think about than their waste. And that's just how it's been. So a company like OnSite that, when we're coming in, we're new, we're all new. And we were certainly new in 2019, and new enough that there's good and bad that come with that. Obviously, there's a lot that you need to learn, but there's not a lot that you need to unlearn. Pardon the double negative there. You're kind of creating everything. So you're asking why. Why is it this way? Does it have to be this way? Why are the contracts this way? Do they have to be this way? Or can we go in a more flexible model? How is data utilized? And how does that drive the programs? And how does that build efficiencies for the customer? Those are all things that not a lot of people are asking those questions. I don't believe. It didn't seem. Certainly you have the big player at the top. Not a lot of reason for them to innovate. They'd only be changing the market share that they have already. And then there's a lot of little guys that, I don't mean to refer to them as that, but a lot of smaller, local, regional, resource-strapped companies that even if they wanted to make a change, they don't necessarily have the resources to. And they have a limited scope, within their geographic. So we found ourselves in a unique position. And with the technology, going back to the TE5000, that was the prototype that I saw on the desk at UC Irvine when I was being interviewed without knowing it at the time. But that was the prototype. Okay, well, with this technology, it converts small quantities of medical waste, typically just syringes, but it can do biohazardous waste at small volumes. If that can sterilize waste and it can be thrown into the trash in most areas, most states, then that eliminates the need for trucks altogether. We can send this out to Antarctica if we can get it there, or Alaska, or these very remote areas that have access to care constraints that are difficult for a truck to get to, or expensive for a truck to get to, and or they have to wait a long time to have a truck come out. It doesn't matter to us. We have a portable mobile unit that we can send out to them, and now they can have their own medical waste right there, treated and thrown away. So that was the idea. We knew that there was a market for it, but you really don't know until you step out into the space, which we ended up doing at the end of 2019, just before a global pandemic hit. That everyone's attention to, amongst other things that were extremely serious, that it was a very difficult time to have a startup, as in any industry. It was a difficult time to do business in any industry. Now you take a company in the healthcare space dealing with medical waste that is now, incredibly critical or important to do the right way. And you're coming with a new venture at that same time, trying to get this industry that is burdened with a pandemic to change their ways and explore something new. Difficult mix, difficult timing, to say the least. And we learned a lot. And I could speak about that, what we learned as well. But I'll follow your lead.
Yeah. So, the timing's crazy. And then, obviously with the amount of, vaccines and everything that's come out of the pandemic, the waste has probably gone up, I'd have to imagine, therefore creating more demand. But, just the space that you're working in, trying to get these people to change. I can imagine just must be incredibly difficult because they have, focuses on just keeping their wheels turning, right? Not necessarily, changing their process on the back end.
Yeah, that's right. And during that time, all problems were illuminated, especially in this space. So maybe before they were generating the waste, that things just kind of ran on the same frequency. The truck showed up on the same day for several years. It was always Derek, and he shows up on the third Thursday of the month or whatever, whatever it was. It was always that. Now you add in the pandemic where there's volumes all over the place with material that no one knows what to do with. And it's scary and it's dangerous. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's not a lot of guidance at the time because everyone was learning. And that's really scary at a time that healthcare is more important than ever in history, to be there with the patient and have its focus on the patient and delivering patient care. Meanwhile, you literally have piles of beyond infectious waste that is piling up. Facility space may not have been a problem in the past for them. Now it's all of a sudden a problem, because not only what do we do with this waste, but where do we put it and how? And how do we get a truck to come out more frequently now because it's piling up? If you're corporate, healthcare is what's called consolidating. There's less and less Newport Beach pharmacies, and now they're a part of CVS. That same thing's occurring in dermatology and in long-term care and surgery centers and ambulatory surgery centers in all of healthcare. So there's less and less single sites and more national chains of healthcare providers. Well, these corporate offices, they all of a sudden realize we don't have a lot of visibility into the site level, what's happening with their waste. Why do we have some locations that are generating 1 box a month and other locations with the same bed count generating 400 boxes a month of medical waste? Why do we have some locations that are paying $200 a month and other locations paying $30,000 a month? There's no visibility. In the past, it didn't really matter as much, or they didn't see it, they didn't feel it. Now, all of a sudden, all of these problems are illuminated. We happen to be in the position at the time where we were learning everything we could, and we were listening to everyone and every voice. And that's the stage that we were at. As we entered into the market, we're trying to learn. We wanted to hear from all healthcare, whether they were our customer. Probably they weren't yet. So we were just learning from our prospects at the time, and they were telling us what their problems were. Their problems were how to, if corporate's speaking to us, how do we build better controls to help safeguard for our sites? How do we even get visibility into what our sites are doing in order to optimize spend or make any types of educated decisions? Because corporate, a purchasing person, at that time especially, is going to have a very difficult time telling that facilities director, you need to stop generating so much waste because your partner across the nation is generating less waste. At the time, that's not, that wouldn't even be appropriate, let alone their capabilities to even have that conversation without insights and without data, without comparisons to kind of lead those discussions. So we were in the right place at the wrong time for everyone. But we were able to add value by learning and building our company at the time based on their problems and helping resolve their problems. So we were able to build our solution. So we had the TE5000 at the time, which certainly added unique value for those that were generating a lot of syringes, and especially those in remote areas, those that didn't want to sit around with a lot of waste for several months like they had in the past. Now, who wants to sit with a syringe that they administered back in March of earlier this year? No one wants to do that. So having the ability to have it sterilized immediately and not sit with it was important. But then also you can use technology beyond the hardware technology that we had. Now we have all this data because we're looking at all this information and volumes and frequencies of pickups and inefficiencies and then just listening to the customers. And that's where we started gathering the data, and then how do we deploy this data and construct it in a way that's usable to optimize programs? All these buzzwords, I know, but all of that formed into what we now have as Waste Tech IQ. So having a way that we can gather all of this data, put it into a program to say, what should my program look like? You have 100 locations. They're all a little bit different in the volumes that they generate. Maybe they shouldn't be as different than they are, but they all have their own unique volumes. And so how do you match service levels according to that? And how do you do it in a way that is sustainable and gives corporate this site level access? And so that's where in 2020 and 2021, we really incubated that waste tech, which we had not planned to do going into the year, and then brought it to market in 2022 and 23 as a driver for how we now run our business. So we have the TE 5000, which is what we're most known for. It's definitely a tangible differentiator. We have thousands of healthcare practices that use that across the nation. And we also have thousands of clients that we manage their pickup services for as well. So we do pickups of all the different types of waste. If they generate pharmaceutical waste or hazardous waste or document shredding, back to that, there's a lot of protected health information out there. Or if they just have larger volumes of medical waste that are just not suitable for the TE 5000, if you take some dialysis centers or skilled nursing facilities that just generate a lot of volume of waste, we do have trucks that we have conduct those pickups. The difference is we're technology driven and data driven. And so the worst thing that we could have is a truck go to a facility and pick up no waste at all. Surprisingly, that happens about 1 to every 3 or 4 trips across the industry.
Wow.
One out of every 4 trucks that go out there, one of those trucks is probably picking up no waste because the waste wasn't ready. There's no visibility into, it's a problem that we realized, and we're working against that. It's wasted costs to healthcare. It's wasted costs to the industry, and it's damage to the planet because there's carbon emissions that are unnecessarily going out to a facility. So that's a key focus. That's been a key focus for us, is eliminating what's called no waste pickups, and then increasing the pickups, the boxes per pickup. So
yes, so it just seems like, whether it's through the TE 5000 or other means, you're really just optimizing, medical waste pickup across the board for all of your customers, figuring out what's the best way to deal with, the problems they have, and how can we do that in, the least wasteful or least harmful way possible.
That's right. Yeah. And we're still, we learn every day. And fortunately, what could be our weakness in that we're new, and maybe our weakness in that we're, smaller than, we're not a billion-dollar company. That could be seen as a weakness. And certainly some days it feels like a weakness and a constraint for sure, but it also allows us to be flexible and be agile. And when we hear a problem that maybe we don't have a solution for, we can build it pretty quickly. And that's how we built our company. And I think we're still in the, we're 5 years in. Yeah, almost coming up on 5 years now of getting into the market for the first time. And it feels like we're day one still. I mean, we have thousands of customers. We're in all 50 states now, and seems like we're on first base now.
Well, the ability to be agile is just huge. And I think that's the fun of startups. And I'm sure that's probably one of the more enjoyable things, rather than, dealing with the red tape of the billion-dollar company. If you guys see a need in the market, you can make a move on it.
Right. Yeah. It's the old, I don't want to say Titanic, because that's probably not the best reference, but the cruise ship versus the speedboat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's that's kind of how it feels some days. It's a lot of work, but it feels good. And this is where kind of the fluffier side of me, because it really does feel good knowing that we're building a business based on the customer's needs. Anything beyond that just feels like a money grab for me. I think, especially today, the consumer is so smart and so educated. Everyone's educated. Everyone deserves to have insights and to understand what's going on with how you're spending your money, especially something as critical as healthcare. That any company that's not delivering that type of value, solving real problems, it's not going to be a sustainable company for the long term. And so it feels good knowing that, as difficult as this is at times, being smaller, and we don't have all the resources that a lot of our peers have, or peers or competitors have. That's tough some days, but knowing that we're building it based on the customer's voice as opposed to our shareholders' voice always, and being market driven, that's the long-term sustainability that I see in this business.
Yeah, customer first. So let's talk about, you brought up the competition. What's been, this product, the product you have, the way you're going about your business, it seems like a bit of a disruptor. So what has been the reaction, of the competition in the market? Are you seeing, any changes in business models? Are you seeing people, saying, hey, can we license this out and integrate it into, our repertoire? What does that all look like?
Yeah, well, again, going back to the construct of the industry, where you have one mega player and then hundreds of small players, I think that drives the conversation quite a bit, because we've had several conversations, and we have some agreements in place with some local regional operators that say, hey, we have facilities that we service on a monthly basis, or every 2 months, or every 2 weeks, that are just not profitable, and we're driving really far to go get them, and they're having to store their waste longer than they'd like. Can we take the TE 5000 and buy it? And we've done those. We do those deals with a couple regional partners of ours. And there is a space there for a Stericycle. They're in all locations. I mean, they're in most of the areas, and I would want nothing more than for them to come up with their own type of TE 5000, because that would really substantiate that would validate the model for this. Now, where we really have seen, I guess, disruption or really change in this space is with providing, resourcing clients more with data. I mean, towards sustainability, there's more reporting, and I don't know that that's from us. I don't know that that's even just doing their own good and making their own decisions for the good. I think that there's a lot of regulatory, for whether it's ESG initiatives, and there's a lot of reporting requirements that come with that. And I know that medical waste has been kind of sheltered from that historically, but it's now pulling into, once you show that you can start to drive some optimization in the medical waste space, reduce the amount of medical waste that's actually taken for treatment, and all the carbon emissions and problems that come with that. There's going to be regulatory demand that naturally steps in and starts to see an opportunity, and that's already starting. And so we see that change happening. Fortunately, we already have that. We already use that with our carbon emissions calculator, our Waste Tech IQ program that is intended to do that. So that's a good thing. I hope that all of our competitors have that, and start to build all the programs that we have and that we're building as well. Because again, I believe that this is a big space. If you're doing right by the customer, there's going to be a place in the market for you. And I think healthcare deserves it. And it's a long time coming. This has been a really frustrating industry. It's pretty public information, a lot that's out there regarding this industry. It's been kind of known. It was described as by a customer a couple of years ago as the black hole of healthcare. Waste and money and resources go into it, get sucked out, and nobody really understands it. And they don't understand, why or anything about it, or where the money's even going, or where the waste is going, and how it's getting pulled in that direction. But all they know is they want to stay away from it. And that's been the medical waste industry. And I don't think that that's how it should be. I don't think that's how it needs to be. And so if the industry can start to change and deconstruct to reconstruct for the better, that's good for all of us. And, that's something I'd like to be a part of, an industry that I can be proud of, not just a company that I'm proud of, but an industry that I can be proud of. And there are certainly some good players in this space, and there's a lot of good people in this space that share that sentiment as well. I think it just takes time, and it takes commitment. It really takes commitment, because it's not always the most lucrative path. It's
Sure.
not the easiest path. But if you're committed to it, I think healthcare deserves that. And I think we'll all benefit when healthcare benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a greater, industry shift to sustainability would go a long way.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pivot to some personal questions. So you talked about being in Kansas City. So is that where you grew up, and is that where you went to school?
I did. I am from Kansas City. Now, if you're not from there, now it's more on the radar thanks to some of our sports teams. But Kansas City is Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. About 20% of it is in Kansas, and 80% what most people hear of. No shame on the Kansas side, but most people it's typically Missouri. So I happen to have spent half my life on the Kansas side and half of my Kansas City life on the Missouri side. And I grew up there. I went to college and played football actually at a small Division II school called William Jewell College in North Kansas City. And I loved it. And I'm still involved with the business program there at William Jewell. And Kansas City is where my heart always will be. My family is there. A lot of friends are there. We're going on 10 years of now being in Orange County, California, and
Wow.
still, it's wild. But my heart is still Kansas City, is still a Midwest guy. And so I love it. Now I have two kids. My wife and we have a 7-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter, and all they know is Orange County, California, other than visiting the grandparents and some of the friends back in Missouri. They're Californian. So it's been interesting. We love both places. But yeah, certainly different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, two different worlds. Our CEO's from Kansas City. He's always trying to get people. I hear a lot about that. Internally these days.
Yeah, I was fortunate so I played football in college, and after college, during my senior year of college, I was asked, "Hey, would you be interested in working for the Chiefs after you graduate?" And I jumped all over that opportunity. I would have done it for free. It was amazing. I worked at Enterprise Rent a Car as well, and beyond working the 100 hours a week at Enterprise, I did game day operations for the Chiefs, and
Oh
I
wow.
was visiting team clubhouse. Uh, thanks to Coach Jeff Bauer that pulled me into that opportunity, which was a dream job at the time. I was the goofball catching punts at halftime before the games, warming them up and getting. I was the towel boy and the water boy, and I was so happy to be that. Back when they did not have Patrick Mahomes, and they didn't
Yeah.
have Andy Reid, and they didn't have Travis Kelce, and they didn't have any Super Bowls, and they didn't have any playoff wins either. And this is 2010 to 2013, where there was a season or two in there where they didn't even have a home win. But I I believe your CEO shares the same passion. I love them then, and I love them now, and so not to bring this into to that discussion, but go Chiefs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, they're definitely on top of the mountain right now. I'm a Patriots fan, so I've gone the other
Get it?
way.
Yeah, you did.
I had a good then, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
now
exactly.
now I'm back at the bottom. Awesome. So you mentioned college and then getting an MBA at USC. So how did your education end up shaping your career path?
Well, I'll say this: my undergrad, I chose the college I chose because I followed a coach and I wanted to play football. At the time of 17 years old, senior in high school, I had no intention of no idea of what 22 years old me would look like. I didn't care at all. I knew I wanted to keep playing football, and I went there. I was so fortunate that I did, because I fell in love with the school, and it was a small liberal arts college. It still is small liberal arts college, William Jewell College, and beyond the academics side of it, I was kind of a turd back then. I didn't put much into studying or anything there, but what I did love and what I did take away from that college is, maybe it comes from the liberal arts side of things, but they really build core around, they actually have kind of a curriculum around critical thought and inquiry. So it's the critical thinking school in the area, and every class, whether it's statistics class or, a music class, if you take that, everything is around three questions of what is real, how do we know, and how should we behave? And it sounds silly. And when I was going there, and the first class that you have to take is the responsible self. And this isn't a promotion for old little William Jewell College, but it tells a lot about, it really built a lot within me. The first class you take is a critical thought and inquiry 100, which is the responsible self. You learn about everything. You read the Bhagavad Gita, you read On Liberty by John Stuart Mill, you read about all these different forms of life and ideas and perspectives. And somebody that came from a town of 8,000 people in Harrisonville, Missouri, you don't get a lot of that type of perspective. And so that's where I think I formed a lot of the critical thinking that can be applied everywhere in life. I didn't care to go to class, but I wanted to meet up with people after class to talk about, what is real? How do we know? How should we behave? I know that sounds silly, but it was a real thing that we did. Trust me, we would get drinks, sneak them into the dorm room and have deep conversations. It was super weird, but we all were alike in that regard. Didn't care much for class, but I made it through. And then, so that was William Jewell College. I think that really built me at the core level. It wasn't until 2017, 2016, somewhere around then, when I really wanted to level up my understanding for business and for economics and the world and how it all worked. And, from a business standpoint. And I happened to be in Southern California. I had always loved USC, going back to, I'm half on the Kansas side, half on the Missouri side. You don't see that a lot. Most people are either KU or MU. I was pretty indifferent. I liked USC. And so I had the opportunity to go and get my MBA at USC. That is where I think everything really changed up here. Not so much in the core, but really understanding. Maybe it was because it seemed more elective than going to undergraduate. Now I chose to pay $100,000 for something. I better go to class and learn. And I did. And I think, during that 2-year period of getting my MBA, it sharpened the eye for economics was a big takeaway from there. But even like the financial acumen that comes with it, getting your MBA, all incredibly applicable. I always say, I was at Enterprise Rent-A-Car for a few years after William Jewell, and that was kind of my initial MBA. You learn so much, and then that was really sharpened at USC. And so the timing was right. It was perfect. Great school. I'm still a big USC fan, and I'm really appreciative for the program and what I learned there and how that developed me as a business leader. And I can't say enough about that. So, and I'm a huge proponent of continuous improvement. I know that's kind of everybody says that, but really, whether it's podcasts or even just self-reflection and trying to get better, and complacency is the enemy in my mind. And that drive, I think, is really important for people to have. And if you don't have it, then start to work on it and try to get better, because that's what seems to separate those that I hate to be stagnant. I don't want to be stagnant. And so I think developing educationally and academically, that's a portion of it, but then who you surround yourself with, the conversations that you have with yourself and with others, I think are incredibly important and applicable to business too, because it all manifests with OnSite now. We're taking those same, questions and critical thinking and then business acumen and everything. It's not just me. I have an awesome team. I've been really, really fortunate and really lucky in some cases. And I've felt that pressure that, okay, you got really lucky to get hired into this role. You got really lucky that you got that LinkedIn message from Mike Benvenuti randomly in February of 2019. How lucky is that? So don't waste those opportunities. And I think my life has just been built with that. People taking chances on me and me not wanting to let them down. And I mean, that's what drives me. So I've been really, really fortunate to get those chances, and I work really hard to not let them down.
Great answer. Well said. And, now that USC's in the Big Ten, you're basically a Midwest school. So,
Yeah, we're back. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
you're back. All right, a couple more. So since joining OnSite as a CEO, how have you balanced your family and work life? Obviously, there's a lot of demands, especially being in a startup. It doesn't really stop, right? And there's a lot of pressure on that. So, what's been, how have you handled that?
Well, I again am really fortunate in that my wife steps up and she helps. I mean, doesn't help. She leads when it comes to building the family, building the house, and making all of this possible. I work really, really hard so I can have a balance. I'm not the CEO that misses my son's baseball games. I'm not the CEO that misses my son's flag football games. In fact, I coach his flag football games and I coach his baseball games because I know that that's the only currency that kids see is time spent with them. Now there's a balance. I understand the importance of building something for generational change, and that drives me as well. But it is absolutely it's a no-go for me if I don't have the ability to balance my family. These years you can't get back. My son lost his first tooth yesterday, and you would have thought that we won the Super Bowl again. I mean, it was, so we celebrated that yesterday, and we'll celebrate it again today. And he has his first day of second grade tomorrow, and I'll be there to drop him off, and I'll be there to pick him up. There's certain things that are really important, and I'm really fortunate that I can rely on my team. I have leaders within my company that really run the company. I work on the company, they work in the company, they lead inside the company. And I think, I'm fortunate to have that with Austin and with Desiree, and they kind of run the ops and the sales side, and they're equipped and capable to do so. So I can, I don't have to do everything because I trust them. So, and they know that my family would come first. So as I think it should be. Fortunately, the company hasn't had to sacrifice because of that, dynamic.
That's fantastic, and I can totally relate. I started coaching t-ball this summer, so it was electric as always, and we have fall ball starting up. So
T-ball's tough. Yeah, T-ball's tough. Coach pitch is tough, but T-ball's even tougher. Baseball's just tough for at that age. Flag football, I really like coaching flag football because they are alive and into it. It's like glorified tag for those kids. Whereas baseball, you're picking kids up from the outfield, they're laying down.
Yeah.
Come on, Dylan, get up. You got to get up.
Yeah. There's about 3 kids that know what they're doing, and then
and
the other 7 are
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mess. Whereas flag football is also a mess, but it's really action-packed chaos, and I love it. So enjoying coaching that right now. Flag football season starts this week, so
that's awesome. All right, so one final question. Again, thanks for taking the time to chat today. But what can we expect from OnSite? For the end of 2024 and going into 2025.
Next 2 years, we plan on just deepening the relationships that we have in the areas that we're in with the services we provide, just getting deeper and deeper there, and focusing on where we add value and our strengths, and just building a better business there for our customers. We want to continue to listen to our customers, continue to be agile and be customer driven, and solve their needs. But now we're really at the point where we know what we do well, and we know where we don't add a lot of value. And so now we know what we know, and we can actually build the business based on what we know, as opposed to what we are simply exploring and experimenting. And I'm really excited about the next 5 years, equally as excited as I was for the past 5 years. But the next 5 years are less exploratory. Now it's about building and providing value where we know we provide value today, and just doing that more.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, we're rooting for you. Appreciate being a partner. Thank you for your time, and best of luck for the rest of this year.
Thanks, Johnny. Take care.